Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brett Provenzano, the superintendent of the Fairport Central School District. Thank you all for attending this very important community meeting. The purpose of our session is to review our current state of our schools and hope for a return to full-time school this spring. There's lots of questions about our reopening advisory committee. I'll be sharing information about the composition of this advisory committee and some very important next steps for our community. I know that many community members are coming in this evening, probably just coming in from outside. It's a beautiful day, and I'm sorry that I had to cut it short, but I know that this is of great importance. I think it's important to recognize as people are coming in, I really appreciate all the dialogue. I appreciate the feedback. Right now, as of this afternoon, there were close to 2,100 surveys completed, and that hasn't, it's been out just one day. So I'm looking forward to getting more responses. Those responses will be incredibly important for our advisory committees and our planning moving forward. It's really interesting. On Friday, it will mark a year on March 14th when we learned about what was happening with COVID-19 and our closure. In 1 year's time, 1 year later, think about what we have gone through. There's been health implications, economic impacts, racial distress, healthcare inequalities, political divisiveness. Social emotional impacts have been incredible from the isolation, from the lack of socialization. There's food insecurities. I remain amazed at how many families in our community rely on our schools for nutrition. There's been educator frustration, pivoting on a dime, doing things that they've never had to do, an amazing effort teaching online while also having kids in front of them. Hasn't been done to the extent in a way that really strives to meet students' needs. Appreciate how they pivoted and how they've made the best out of these very uncertain circumstances. And you're talking about educators who are planners. And when you are finding out information in moments' notice, it really adds to the level of frustration for all of our educators, for our administrators who have been on demand and on call as needed. In fact, I have a bunch of our administrators, building principals, and some of our facilitators for our advisory committees. And I know that they're ready to have these next level conversations because you know what? There's been lots of family conversations. I've had the pleasure to talk to hundreds of parents through PTA meetings. We've done thought exchange surveys. I've had dialogue with countless people in exchanges, personal meetings or emails. I understand people are tired. People are ready to move forward and engage in what we do best in our Fairport schools. This is a really challenging time because we're so close. It reminds me when I go out for a jog and I see that I'm stopping at the mailbox. I could see the mailbox. It's about 100 yards away, and I just know that's the hardest leg. We are at that last leg. We need to find a way to stay united, to use the spirit and unity that has bound us and has made us a unique community. Those Fairport values, that irrepressible spirit, more than ever, we need to continue to lean on each other and learn our way through this in this last leg. Very important. I really want to share with you, this is our bottom line. We are always bound by the guidance from our health departments. That's written in law. We will do and move forward what's best for our students, what's best for our staff and community at large based upon the approvals and guidance that they give us moving forward. And there's lots of movement, there's lots of shift. We're waiting for the New York State Department of Health to make some comments on the CDC new standards and how we're interpreting them. There's talk about different things that we're going to do locally, and maybe there'll be some guidance and a pathway for the Health Department of Monroe County to be involved, but we need that approval from the New York State Department of Health. That has not happened yet. However, that doesn't stop us from putting out clear dates and a pathway back. This pathway is incredibly important so our students and our staff and our families know what to expect in the next several weeks. The district is making plans to fully open our schools K-12 5 days a week to in-person learning between April 19th and May 3rd. We would love to be there sooner. However, we also have a realistic understanding of what it is going to take to reopen our schools. April 19th is the date that we're aiming for, and it could also be a May 3rd. Again, it depends on a few variables, which I'm going to explain in a moment. But we're also looking at this in grade bands. We know that K-5, 6, 8, and 9, 12 has different implications to consider. What we're allowed to do in one grade band or able to do in another could affect reopening plans. But we will always be driven by the science and the data and the guidance. And there it is again. The CDC, the New York State Department of Health, and the Monroe County Department of Health, we're hoping that we're going to get more clarity moving forward on how we can get guidance and approvals to open our schools up. We also know that vaccination rates are increasing in our schools. Many of our staff have received their vaccination, and the vaccine is doing what it is supposed to be doing. It's saving lives. It's changing the course of COVID-19. If you do get COVID-19, we're seeing less hospitalization rates, and that's a really good thing. That's a good sign for our community. The concept of community spread is important in this conversation. I want to take a moment and talk to you about the COVID positive case rates per 100,000 population for Monroe County is approximately 140 COVID cases on a 7-day rolling average per 100,000 population, okay? But we also have it broken down by zip code. And I think this is important to recognize. In order for us to have any type of reopening, we need to continue to have decreasing rates of community spread. This was a map by zip code last week. You could see that here are the bands. The yellow is the golden ticket. You know, that's a low transmission rate, 10 to 49 cases per 100,000. Then you have a moderate, 50 to 99 cases. And that's where Perrington was, and Fairport, and Penfield, and Pittsford, Wheatland, Chili. You could see that other districts, Webster, Spencerport, parts of Brighton, were in the red zone, okay? Cases that were greater than 100. I don't have our exact number, and I was looking for our exact number. And you see East Rochester doing very well. They have between 10 and 49. And this is important to recognize because that was last week, but this is this week. There's been a shift in infection rates. And in fact, Webster was red. Now Webster is in the moderate positive case rate zone. And look where Perrington is. Right. Now, again, I don't know what the range is. I'm anticipating that last week when we were living here, you know, we were probably close to 100, right? Anywhere probably between 90 and 99, I'm guessing. And then this week, you know, we bumped up over it, and I'm not sure to what extent. But it does really highlight the importance of community spread and what you might be seeing around the county. Here's HFL. They've been in the yellow zone as well. You might be seeing schools doing different things based upon their ability to do them and community spread, right? So what's happening in one district Even though we all share the same space and, we're on the same travel teams and we compete against each other on the weekends, these can fluctuate and impact what we could do in our schools. It's important to recognize that. In order to process and to get community members and stakeholders involved, we are engaging in the advisory committees, okay? We have 3 advisory committees, K-5, 6-8, and 9-12 grade levels, 3 different bands. Our key indicators, again, using the guidance from the New York State Department of Health. Now, if that should shift because they give us a pathway back to the Finger Lakes Reopening Committee or the Monroe County Department of Health, we will take that guidance, but that hasn't happened yet. We need to make sure that we're always thinking health and safety, equity. We need to make sure as a public school that we're serving all of our families and giving them the same great Fairport education that they deserve and that people have come accustomed to. The social emotional wellness of our students is of the utmost importance. That's the most important piece that we need to think about as we transition kids back to school. I'm sure people are worried about the academic readiness. I'm confident that over time those gaps will be filled and we will get kids caught up in as much as we can. But that's not going to be solved in a 10-week period of time. We need to make sure that we're supporting our students from a social emotional standpoint, that they are getting reacclimated to school, and that's really important to do. And think about it, if we're able to do that this spring versus having to wait through the summer into the fall, I think we'd be a step ahead. That's why I'm really excited and hopeful that we will receive the guidance based upon decreasing community spread, increase in vaccination rates will be a very important part of that moving forward. The participants, you see the participants, there'll be a stakeholder representation. It's going to be a great opportunity to process some of the good questions that we're receiving tonight at this very moment. There's a Google form that you have access to. Please continue to ask your questions through that Google form, and we will do our best to respond to them if I'm not doing it right now in this presentation, or we'll be feeding it through our advisory committees to get all the great minds that are going to be on our advisory committee. Now, if you take a look, 6 parents selected through the application process, okay? And they'll also include a PTA representative. We had over 200 parents apply. I mean, it was just inspiring to see the level of commitment, and that's why I love this community, because there's such engagement and such care and passion. What was the criteria, or what is the criteria? Because again, to get through 200 and do it thoughtfully, in a very concise, accurate manner, we had to come up with some criteria. And people had wonderful comments, and we used the comments to compare them against our district mission, vision, and our Board of Education core beliefs. And we also scored, hey, what? You know what? They've been an active member, community members. They know our schools. They understand what we're trying to accomplish in our schools, and they're active members of our school community. So many incredibly talented and smart people out there who want to lend their expertise. That was certainly a part of the conversation. But also having an expansive mindset. We need to have an open mind. There's many different opinions and perspectives on this reopening conversation, and we see that being played out. But we want to be able to constructively process all the different ideas together. And we'll be looking forward to reaching out to those who have been selected and getting our committees going, which I'll share with you in a few moments. Again, using the existing guidance from the New York State Department of Health, and again, that could shift to a different entity, but for now, it's the New York State Department of Health. They will determine and they will help us and support us in making sure we can do this in a safe way. These advisory groups are going to provide input, recommendation, suggestions regarding options for the district to consider to fully reopen to in-school learning by April 19th. Okay, there was also going to be a fall component of this. I envision these groups to continue to talk about summer programming, orientations, curriculum writing opportunities. The piece about online learning, that's going to be an ongoing conversation. As we move along, online learning will continue. We anticipate there'll be families that still need to be or not feeling comfortable to come back into school. So we're committed to providing online learning for the rest of the year. As we move forward, what's it going to look like? How can we do it differently, or maybe or in a way that is different, or using different tools to promote a Fairport education? We're going to be studying that, and that's going to be part of the advisory committees and future conversations, and many questions about the online learning. And I know that there's the survey or the form that people are filling out. People want to know, will they be able to continue in online learning? And the answer is yes. For the remainder of this year, we will still have online learning. Right? A lot of this is us just being told. As you have heard me say before, I found out a lot of this information the same time that many of you do on social media. But I'm hopeful that we can always try to be as thoughtful and as methodical and planful as we possibly can. And that's why the April 19th date is important. That's why the May 3rd date is important, because it sets our eyes on a date relative to that community spread. Or if there's guidance that comes out sooner that helps us define that pathway with more clarity, that's helpful too. But I think it's important that the community knows, that our staff knows, and that our students knows that this is the path that we're headed down, and we're looking forward to developing it with our groups. In these groups, the essential question is, why can't we return to full-time, 5 days a week in-person school, given the approval that it is safe to return by the Department of Health? And again, vaccination rates are continuing to increase. Community infection rates continue to be on the decline, and we continue to see that trajectory occurring, and we hopefully can get in those low areas, those low ranges, so we can bring our students back to school with confidence. And we're going to prioritize our grade bands in the following order: K-6, 7, 8, and 9, 12. And the reason being is you could do different things. You could pod and cohort and team kids and group kids together, so you can know where they travel throughout the day more easily in a K-6 model. As you get to 7, 8, 9, 12, it becomes more difficult to do that. But the guidance should provide clarity on what it could look like relative to bringing kids back. We know more than ever, it's been a year, transmission risks are different in different age groups. There's a better understanding of the disease process and the care implications. All of these things are good things, and it's a credit to our ingenuity and how we as a nation are able to respond 1 year later. Again, considering the guidelines by, it looks like the CDC and the New York State Department of Health, those look like the guidelines that the Department of Health is going to latch onto, and those are public documents. We know that there's increased access to COVID testing throughout our community. We know that we can test students in school. There was a high infection rate in our county, in our area, somewhere close to 10%. And within our schools, the infection rate was insignificant. That's because of the masking. That's because of the distancing protocols that we had in place. We were able to keep students and our staff and the greater community from further spread. Our schools are safe, and we know that they are. We have a proven, effective contact tracing process. I'm really proud of the work that we've done in our partnership with the county. We're continuing our sanitation protocols, hand washing, cleaning. Airflow is a big conversation. We'll be sharing information with these groups about how we're managing airflow and the ventilation requirements and how all of our buildings are up to code and standards and beyond. We're going to meet and manage the distancing guidance in as much as we can. And again, I mentioned the masking protocols. That's a big piece of this conversation. The cohorts and the podding, those are recommended best practices. I could really see us doing those in the grade bands, the K-6 grade band. Still have to study it, work on the logistics, but how many classrooms would be challenged to meet the distancing requirement? And I think that's the work of our building principals. They'll be sharing that information with the stakeholder groups just so they know exactly what our schools, our classrooms, the learning environments are going to look like. Asking them again, challenge my thinking. Why can't we open up by April 19th? There's some challenges that we need to overcome. Community spread, I showed you last week. We were in a moderate zone. This week we're in the red zone. Master scheduling implications, that's why these surveys are so important. You will get another chance to finalize your responses, but this is a good temperature check. We're going to take the information that we have, and I know that your principals and your teachers have been reaching out, really trying to get a good beat on it, but this information is going to be so important because this may have scheduling and classroom placement implications, and I think it's important that the community knows that. It's important to open up. It's important to get our kids back in school and have a rhythm and pace. I know that that will come with some us having to make decisions, and whether it's trying to get more staff to keep programs consistent, altering our arrival and departure times, not an easy task. It's not as simple as saying K1, 2 are going to go first, because lots of brothers and sisters, might be a first grader and a fifth grader, and it might be an alphabetized dismissal. So those are lots of logistics, and that's why we need so much time to do this. Again, managing the distancing requirements in the cafeteria, transition between classes, gymnasium, special areas, our performing arts. We really need to get our performers up and doing what they do best, expressing their gifts. Our teachers are passionate about trying to bring the performing arts back in a safe way. But how can we do that as we move forward in our office spaces and our common areas, and of course the online learning conversation at each grade band? Here's an important timeline. You can see we're moving right through it. You will see that on Friday, I am going to be communicating and summarizing our next steps for those who didn't get a chance to see this presentation. I also know that it will be recorded and on our YouTube Live channel, and we'll put it on our Facebook Live as well. We're going to notify, I'm going to go back to March 11th. We're going to notify staff and parent volunteers by tomorrow if they're on the advisory committee. Once again, thank you for all of those interested applicants and community members. On March 18th is the first reopening advisory committee meeting at Fairport High School from 6:30 to 8:30. On March 19th, again, we're going to continue to process what we're learning from these meetings and then come back on the 23rd to have a second advisory committee meeting, again, at Fairport High School from 6:30 to 8:30, and make determinations on what's the next steps. Do we need one or two more meetings? The Board of Education then will have a meeting on March 24th to engage in a conversation and a public conversation on what they're learning and how they're viewing the process and how they're synthesizing what's occurring from the 18th and 23rd meetings. And then on the 25th, we'll be doing another community meeting to share just where we are. Again, still many things to learn about. Things need to continue to improve. The masking, the social distancing, all impacts community spread at this point in time. But the good news is that the weather's changing, and we know when the weather changes, the virus has the prospects of changing as well. Please make sure that you remain safe. healthy decisions, because we're all in this together. And that community spread will be an important part of how and to what extent and to how soon we can move forward. Again, the purpose of this meeting was to provide an outline. The questions that you're asking will be processed through a Q&A or also be given to our advisory committees so they could process them and understand what the greater community is looking for as we think about and are hopeful to reopen by April 17th. And we have a May 3rd as another date if we're looking at the community spread components. Again, that's just a band, but we're hoping for that earlier date. I appreciate the interest. I appreciate everybody's patience as we navigate the ever-changing landscape. But the good news is that we're close. And as a community, we need to continue to stay together. We need to now unite more than ever so we can have and achieve our common goal. And that is to get some rhythm and pace to get our students back to school so we could be the best we can be for our students and for our community. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope everyone has a fantastic night, and we look forward to talking to you in the very near future.